Yeah. Analytics off the chain, other channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game. I'm a headliner.
Yo, what is going on, Headliner Nation? We are diving into week 11 now, and it's time to talk about tight ends, the football kind, and who is going to have the largest impact on our rosters. And speaking of have a large impact, barely any of them did last week. Last week was a disaster for the tight end position. Taking a look at our overall accuracy from last week, coming in at 63% overall. I mean, we hit on Tyler Conklin, Dan Arnold, Hunter Henry, but the misses were like big time names. Darren Waller was a miss. Mike Gesicki and TJ Hockenson both put up zeros in good matchups. Even like Dallas Goedert didn't do anything last week. So there were a ton of tight ends last week that, yeah, you're going to be starting that did absolutely nothing. The position was just a mess last week, which really sums up the position as a whole. But before we talk about the matchups, got to remind everybody, our November giveaway is a big one. We are giving away $500 in cash money. All you got to do is head over to Prize Picks, either use the website or download the app, create a new account, use code word headliners when you do it though, and deposit $20. Prize Picks is going to match your $20 deposit, and you're going to be entered into our giveaway for $500 in pure cash money, baby. So make sure you do that as soon as possible. And hey, if you've already done it this season, you're already entered, so you're good to go. Keep playing those Prize Picks. Ladies and gentlemen, though, it is time to hop over and get into our Week 11 start and sit analysis for the tight end position. Kicking off the week is going to be New England at Atlanta on Thursday Night Football. Hunter Henry right now leads the league in touchdown receptions at the tight end position. And I don't feel like anybody's really talking about it. I mean, when you talk about the top tight ends, tons of names are being discussed before I ever see Hunter Henry's name discussed. Now, is he a little touchdown dependent? Yeah, but he's scoring touchdowns, and he is a very, very good target for Mac Jones. Jonnu Smith, obviously, he missed. So, I mean, moving forward, we really need to look at Hunter Henry as one of the better options. Now, if he doesn't score a touchdown, yeah, it could end up being a bad week, but who isn't that for at the tight end position, right? I mean, there's not really a whole lot of guys getting the type of volume that would make him sustainable every single week. A lot of it hinges on those touchdowns. And then for Atlanta, I mean, Kyle Pitts is going to be an obvious start this week. Hayden Hurst will not be for me. I was hoping Hayden Hurst might get a little bit more involved, but that is just not happening. I mean, the only guy getting decent volume is Kyle Pitts in this offense. He's really the only guy I'm trusting right now. He only has one game since week 3 where he's had fewer than 7 targets. So Kyle Pitts is getting the volume that we need at the position. Indianapolis at Buffalo, Jack Mother and Doyle, Mo Cox, Mo problems. Both of them are going to be sits for me. Buffalo does allow the 6th fewest fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends, so I'm not loving their matchup this week. On the flip side for Buffalo, we are going to go with Dawson Knox. Indianapolis does allow the 6th most fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. I'm expecting a little Dawson Knox comeback this week. Cole Beasley has a really, really nice matchup, but because Emmanuel Sanders hasn't really been doing anything, hopefully another week back for Dawson Knox will get him more integrated into the offense again and get some of that trust established again with Josh Allen. Next up is going to bring my Manscaped must-watch matchup of the week. Baltimore at Chicago. Don't forget our friends over at Manscaped are sponsoring us once again this season. So if you're looking for a gift for that special someone in your life, if you head over to manscaped.com, use code word headliners at checkout, you're going to get 20% off your entire order and free shipping. Trust me, they've got some good stuff over there that you can stock up for you never, put it under the tree, some stocking stuffers, whatever it may be. You can get it at manscaped.com. But not only that, it's going to bring my Prize Picks prop to watch of the week as well. For Mark Andrews, I am taking the over on Prize Picks of 49.5 receiving yards. Mark Andrews, the tight end 2 on the season right now. And honestly, he's only 20 fantasy points behind Travis Kelce for tight end 1 status, and he's played in one less game. So And I mean, his start to the season was terrible too. So Mark Andrews has really come on strong since like week 3 when he really started to get back to, that status that we had seen in the past. So really like this matchup from Mark Andrews this week going up against Chicago. With the Chicago defense, it has been bend, don't break at times this season. But I think Baltimore, after a down week last week, they're going to be ready to get back to it in Chicago. And then for Cole Kmet, I like Cole Kmet. Okay. And even after Baltimore put up a 0 to Mike Gesicki last week, and Mike Gesicki saw like 7 targets, but a 0 to Mike Gesicki last week, Baltimore is still allowing the 3rd most fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. Yes, they have been beaten up by some really, really good tight ends. But, I mean, they've also faced some other tight ends that have done, what do we have so far against them? I mean, they've had Logan Thomas, they've had Darren Waller, Travis Kelce, TJ Hawkinson. I mean, they've had good players go up against them, but they're still allowing a lot of fantasy points outside of that. It's week 11 now, and they're still giving up the 3rd most. So even with a big 0 from Gesicki last week, I like Cole Kmet. Him and Justin Fields have really been on the same page as of lately. They're integrating Cole Kmet into the game plan a lot more, and he's really become like check down safety valve for Justin Fields, who's really needed it because he's not getting a lot of time to throw. Speaking of guys who are putting up big fat zeros, TJ Hawkinson last week had a down performance. I expect him to bounce back this week, though. Only 1 target and a losing effort. Why? And I say a losing effort because it was a tie. I don't care. It was a losing effort. I don't understand how he's only getting 1 target. Now, even after a really, really bad performance, he's still the tight end 4 on the season. So the overall body of work hasn't been bad. He has been inconsistent at times this year, though. But we've seen him have some inconsistent games and then bounce back and have big games. So going up against Cleveland, I'm expecting a little bit of a bounce back here. And for the Cleveland tight ends, right now, it feels like you can expect a touchdown out of any of these guys on any given week. I mean, Hooper, Njoku 2 weeks ago. It just seems like they get a touchdown, but that's really it. So for me, I just don't trust it because there hasn't been a lot of volume to go with it, and it's really been inconsistent who it is. It's not like David Njoku is the guy that's getting a touchdown, every couple of weeks. It's David Njoku. It's Austin Hooper. They're getting mixed back and forth. So for me, I'm just going to skip on all of them because it's just not worth it in my opinion. Not going to be much to see in this matchup with Houston and Tennessee. Jordan Akins, Brevin Jordan, both going to be sits for me. At the tight end position, Houston's giving up the 3rd most fantasy points per game to tight ends. And I'm looking at this, and I'm like, do I really want to go with Jeff Swaim this week? It's a tough one. Right now, I've got him listed as a sit. Taking a look at it, going up against Houston, I expect A.J. Brown to get back on track. I'm expecting the running game as well. I just don't know if Jeff Swaim gives me enough volume. The touchdown upside is going to be there. If you're really desperate for a tight end, you could go with Jeff Swaim. As of right now, I've got him listed as a sit. That could change, though. So make sure you check back on the rankings video. As of right now, he's a sit. As I get a little bit more into the rankings, we might bump him up to a start, depending on who else has decent upside this week. Green Bay at Minnesota, one of the NFL's longest and most heated rivalries. Green Bay, for me, Mercedes Lewis, nope, they're just running more 4 wide receiver sets at this point. They don't care about Mercedes Lewis. And then for Minnesota, taking a look at Minnesota, Tyler Conklin has been a start for me. This week, I'm going to say no, though, because in this week, I'm expecting a whole lot of Dalvin Cook, and I am expecting a whole lot of Justin Jefferson and a whole lot of Adam Thielen. Tyler Conklin, to me, is purely touchdown speculative play this week. For me personally, I can't bank on a whole lot of volume for him when I expect them to be running the ball an awful lot, and I'm expecting big weeks from Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. Miami and the New York Jets and Mike Gesicki, man, we got to get back on track, right? Last week sucked, but he led the team in targets again. It wasn't like they weren't getting him the ball. They were trying to. Just nothing came out of it. And sometimes that just happens in fantasy football, especially this season, right? So I'm going to go back to him this week. Still a really, really good option. And the wide receiver games last week, they're not sustainable. I mean, it was basically 2 plays that made up over half of the passing offense. So I'm not banking on those guys to contribute any more than what they have in the past. Mike Gesicki is still going to be a guy in this offense. And then for the New York Jets, Ryan Griffin, Tyler Kroft. New Orleans and Philadelphia should be a fun matchup to watch for the tight end position. Adam Troutman's going to be a start for me this week. Now, listen, on the outside, we've got tough matchups for the New Orleans wide receivers. But Adam Troutman is still playing 85% of the offensive snaps or more so far this season. And Philadelphia allows the most fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. This is one of those classic what are NFL coaches doing scenarios, right? Because I feel like if New Orleans was smart, they would put together a game plan that would feature Adam Troutman. I mean, you've been having him on the field a ton. Philadelphia can't stop tight ends. Outside matchups might be pretty tough. Your wide receivers have been okay, inconsistent at times. Why don't we feature Adam Troutman? And again, some of it is also going to depend on Alvin Kamara. Will Alvin Kamara be back this week? If not, that just is a little more that could go to Adam Troutman. And for Philadelphia, Dallas Goedert coming off of a bad week. I've got Devonta Smith as a sit this week because he's going to be going up against Marshawn Lattimore. Someone's going to have to get the targets. Can't trust Quez Watkins. Can't trust Jalen Reagor. We're going to have to trust Dallas Goedert this week. Washington at Carolina could be bringing back one of our favorite tight ends to start the season, Mr. Logan Thomas. Logan Thomas is a start for me this week if he is back. Now, obviously, if he's not back, he's not a start, right? So got to monitor it throughout the week. He was close last week, practiced all last week, but Ron Rivera and Washington just said, you know what? Let's give it another week. So we'll see if he makes it back this week. And for Carolina, Ian Thomas, Tommy Tremble continue to be no's. San Francisco at Jacksonville is going to highlight 2 of the better performers over the past weeks, and George Kittle and Dan Arnold. George Kittle, absolutely a start. The dude is balling out. He looks excellent, looks healthy. Jimmy Garoppolo actually looks like he's playing well. The offense is doing good. Deebo Samuel is helping out. Brandon Ayuk seems to be on the way back. And I say Deebo Samuel is helping out. He's doing more than that. But anyway, George Kittle being back has been a huge boost to this offense. They look really, really good right now. And for Jacksonville, for Dan Arnold, he leads the team in targets and receiving yards over the last 3 weeks combined. So Laviska Shenault ended up leading the team in targets last week, but Dan Arnold led the team in targets the previous 2 weeks. He is a guy that is firmly cemented as the top option in this offense for Trevor Lawrence, and will continue to do so this week against San Francisco. Cincinnati at Las Vegas is going to bring the return of CJ Who's Your Mama to the starting slot for our tight ends. Las Vegas allows the second most fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. It's been a few weeks since we've seen anything out of CJU. I think this week against Las Vegas, we're going to see it a little bit more again. I think that there's some nice touchdown upside this week from CJU. And for Darren Waller, down week last week, but it doesn't matter if you own him and you don't have Travis Kelce, you're still starting him. Dallas at KC, and some of this is going to hinge on CeeDee Lamb. Is he going to play this week? Personally, I do believe he will. He has an arm contusion, had to leave the game early last week. Haven't really heard, as of this recording, anything to say that he might end up missing this week. But if for some reason he does, it puts Dalton Schultz in even a better spot, going up against Kansas City that allows over 15 fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. So if that does happen with CeeDee Lamb, I think we're good. With Dalton Schultz, really, if CeeDee Lamb plays, it's all about, does Schultz or Michael Gallup? You know, who's going to be that number 3 option? Does it go back to being Gallup? Can Schultz keep his place? We're going to have to keep an eye on that over the next couple of weeks. And again, with Kansas City, good to see them flowing again. Good to see Patrick Mahomes playing well. If he's playing well, Travis Kelce plays well. If Travis Kelce plays well, unless you had a disaster of a draft, you're probably winning a lot of games. Arizona at Seattle. And for Arizona this week, we are going to go back to Zach Ertz, and I don't know why. I really don't. It just kind of feels like as soon as I sit Zach Ertz, he's going to have a huge game, and then everyone's going to be like, see, Kyle told you so. Even though for weeks I've been telling you all there's no volume there to back it up. It's all about the big plays for Zach Ertz. Now, the volume hasn't been necessarily bad, but our goal here is 8 fantasy points a week in half PPR formats. In full PPR formats, you're probably getting that. In half, though, You're missing it. But again, it feels like as soon as I say sit Zach Ertz, he's going to have a big game. So we're keeping him lower in the rankings, but we're going to keep him in the lineup unless you have better options. And for Seattle, I'm going to go with Gerald Everett as a start this week too. He had 8 targets last week and he caught all 8 of them. And the thing that I think helps with Gerald Everett right now is that finger from Russell Wilson. I mean, you saw it last week if you watched the game. He has it taped up. He has it covered up. He had like a special glove that he was going to wear over it, but didn't feel comfortable with it. And even some of the throws didn't look comfortable. And so until he really starts to feel better with that finger, I think we're going to see a lot of Gerald Everett as kind of that safety valve, that check down option that he can look towards when things get a little bit more tough. Pittsburgh at the Los Angeles Chargers, and for Pat Freiermuth, he's going to go back to being a start for me. He was a start last week, didn't really deliver, decent game, but the Los Angeles Chargers allow the 4th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends, which bodes well for him. But I'm seeing a few things. I've seen a few things about, Eric Ebron's back, so it hurts Pat Freiermuth. No. Listen, Eric Ebron's not that good, okay? Trust me, I watched him up close for several years. Yes, he had one really good year in Indianapolis. I get that. He's not better than Pat Freiermuth. I don't care if he's been out, and that's when Pat Freiermuth broke out. Freiermuth still led the team in targets last week. Now, did it all materialize into a big game? No, it didn't. But he led the team in targets again. And hopefully this week, if Ben Roethlisberger gets back, we get back to seeing more Patty F. Okay, I'm not going to call him Patty F. Pat Freiermuth. Anyway, and for the Los Angeles Chargers, they're all a sit for me. I've been talking about it for a few weeks now. All these guys are splitting snaps, they're splitting routes, they're splitting targets, they're splitting everything. There's no rhyme or reason to what they're doing any single week with the tight ends. I just know it's not fantasy viable. And finally, the New York Giants at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Evan Ingram. I mean, his last 2 weeks, and obviously the bye last week, but his 2 weeks before that, built solely on like touchdowns. One big touchdown was like 30 yards and another one was like a 2-yard touchdown. I'm still not trusting that. And that's coming from a guy who loved Evan Ingram for the last several years. Still not trusting it. And for Tampa Bay, it's all about when will Rob Gronkowski be back. I don't have him listed here. We just got to wait and see at this point. We have got to wait and see what happens with Rob Gronkowski. OJ Howard, though, and Cameron Brate. The one thing I do know is even with Gronk out, those guys aren't doing anything. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Tight end start and sit analysis is in the books for week 11. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you're new here. And let me know down in the comments who is your favorite matchup of the week. Who is one guy that you're really excited to see? Love y'all. Appreciate you hopping into this episode and hanging out with me. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I will catch you all in the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.